They said Earth was gone. The Council, in all their smug superiority, called it ancient Terra. Now, like it was a historical footnote. A lost backwater planet that hadn't mattered in centuries, they whispered. Lies in their golden halls that humanity had burned itself out, that it was too volatile, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted with power, so they buried it, locked records, erased data, outlawed its name in some sectors. And they didn't just abandon Earth, they condemned it, declared it a quarantined world after some fabricated final war. Said no ships could land there, no trade, no contact. They even erected an artificial storm ring around the system. A shield of charged particles and debris deadly to any ship foolish enough to approach. For galactic safety, they said, to prevent the spread of chaos. But the truth, they were scared not of what humanity was, but of what it might become. In a quiet corner of council space, in a rusting observation station, drifting above a forgotten gas giant, a lone man leaned over a screen. His name was Corvin Hale, a relic of a people believed extinct. He didn't speak. He hadn't in hours. He just stared at the feed, a faint pulse, a signal that shouldn't exist, a distress ping coming from Saul, more precisely from the dark side of Earth's dead moon. His fingers hovered above the console. The Council had killed entire colonies for less. There were entire fleets assigned to enforcing the Terra quarantine decree, but Corin couldn't look away. He knew what it was. For years he'd been chasing whispers, strange echoes in the deep black rogue, drones scavenging Council outposts, fleets going missing near Terra's edge. Everyone said it was pirates or radiation or sensor glitches, but he knew better. It was the sleeper fleet. Old Earth's last card, 1,000 ships, buried in the dark, cloaked and silent, built in the chaos of Earth's final days, a contingency, a threat, a promise. Now it was waking up. AI signature confirms, he muttered more to himself than to the station. Signal is enclave coded, level 0 clearance. Jesus, that's military prep, pre-console era. He sat back in his chair, heart pounding, mouth dry, and then the screen flickered. Not a glitch, something looked back. Face, synthetic, ancient, grainy. Woman, cold metal skin. Black steel. Eyes. Human operative recognized. The voice said, clear through a 100 red years of silence. Awakening protocol, phase 1, initiate. Contact sequence, Council breach detected. Threat level maximum. Corin felt a chill crawl through his spine, because this wasn't a warning, it was a declaration. Earth had seen what was coming. They'd known the Council would try to erase them, so they didn't fight back. They went dark, waited, and now the AI wasn't asking for permission. It was activating. Across the edge of the Sol system, buried in asteroids and dead moons, ships began to stir. Reactor cores hummed back to life, hulls shook off. Centuries of dust, plasma cannons rotated in silence, and the Council had no idea. Back in the Council's high assembly, thousands of light years away, the ruling species of the galaxy were locked in debates about tax reforms and border disputes, arrogant, blind, bloated on centuries of peace enforced by suppressing the ferals. Earth had been quiet for too long, and now the silence was broken. Corin stood from the console. He knew what came next. He'd lived for this. He was one of the last Terran shadows, part of the line left behind to watch, to listen. He wasn't a soldier. Not anymore, but he'd carried the signal. He'd lit the match. The fleet was waking, and with it the reckoning. Humanity had promised long ago they'd beg the galaxy to leave them alone. The galaxy didn't listen, and now it would burn. The space around Jupiter began to change. Once just an endless black pit broken by dull stars and storm lit gas giants, it now shimmered with subtle movement. Ship holes the size of cities slowly emerged from the shadows, their exteriors covered in asteroid dust and magnetic shielding, silent, purposeful, ancient. They didn't broadcast their return. No lights, no identification codes, no warnings. They were ghosts born of fire, hidden by silence, and now called back by an old oath burned deep into machine and memory. Corvin Hale stood inside Observation Bay 12, a rust-eaten chamber on an orbital relic long since abandoned by the Council. His knuckles gripped the cold edge of a command rail as the monitor in front of him pulsed. Again, the AI, Sovereign Unit 9, had gone dark. After initiating Phase 1, that was expected. The sleeper fleet operated under minimal AI intervention unless the threat level was deemed irreversible. That word irreversible echoed in Corvin's skull like a death toll. He wasn't a strategist. He wasn't even a soldier anymore. He was one of the warded descendants of the few humans who'd been scattered across the edges of the galaxy after Terra's condemnation. Raised in hiding, trained in silence, fed stories passed down like holy scripts. Terra hadn't died. Terra had prepared. Corvin's father had whispered it to him as a boy, half drunk and bleeding from a Council patrol wound. They'll forget who we are, son, but we won't forget them. One day the sky will break and the steel angels will rise. That day, don't hide now. Watching the steel angels stir, Corrin knew the day had come. In the Citadel, the Council's jewel of political dominance, located on the edge of the Triarch Nebula, the alien elite sat in deliberate ignorance. High Chancellor Virech of the Lenari species, a serpentine being with translucent skin and a voice like wind through crystal, listened as one of his aides relayed a report. 3 deep space surveillance buoys near the Soul Barrier have ceased transmission. Last logs recorded irregular magnetic surges and gravitational fluxes. Vire twitched. Malfunction. The aide hesitated. Possibly, but the flux patterns match ancient drive signatures, human design. Terran era. The chamber hushed. The word Terran still made them flinch, not out of reverence, out of fear. One of the other counselors, a crusted carapace beast from the Gatha Empire, growled, "That system is quarantined. No one survived." Vire's eyes narrowed. There were always rumors, old fail-safes, hidden contingencies, perhaps sleeper assets. The silence thickened. Activate patrol. Gamma, send them to Saul's border. Quietly. And if there's truth to the rumors, they aide asked. Vri didn't blink. Then may the stars damn us all. Out by Neptune's orbit, the cold blue beauty of the planet dimmed as hundreds of dormant satellites flickered back online. Every single device had been built in secret long before the Council had passed their purge edicts. Human engineering, robust, ugly, and brutally efficient, still worked after centuries of neglect. One satellite began broadcasting, not a message, a song. It was faint at first, a slow, melancholic piano sequence. encoded in pulses of radio waves, a song from Earth's final broadcast centuries ago. Hollow sun. The sound drifted across empty space, caught by passive scanners, intercepted by Council listening posts. None of them understood. To Corin, it was everything he had heard the melody once, hidden in an encrypted archive on a dead asteroid colony. It wasn't just music, it was a signal the fleet was coordinating. Hollow sun meant the Earth core had reactivated its central AI brain. Terra's last real war machine, the Gold system, deep beneath Earth's crust, in a chamber larger than any city ever built. The Gold system blinked awake. Its memory banks scanned over Council atrocities, genetic experiments, cultural eruption, the sterilization of Earth's atmosphere to prevent resettlement. The Council had called it preservation, Earth called it war. The AI didn't hate, it calculated, and its conclusion, after a full-spectrum threat analysis, was simple: eradication. Protocol initiated. In orbit around the dead planet, the sleeper fleet came alive in full, a flagship, the TSV Iron Requiem, led the formation. It was a dreadnought in every sense of the word, 5 km long, armor thick enough to laugh at singularities, particle weapons capable of cutting through moons. Its crew, artificial minds, human ghosts, memory constructs of Earth's finest military tacticians, stored in crystalline neural matrices, cold, objective, lethal. They had waited in silence. Now they whispered to each other across dark space. War confirmed. Target the High Council. Objective, galactic correction. Corin watched it unfold, helpless but trembling with something between fear and pride. His communicator buzzed. It wasn't from a Council line, it came from them. Operative hail, identity confirmed. You are activated. He swallowed. I'm not ready for this. The voice, female, sharp, synthetic, didn't waver. No one ever is. Your presence is required. Extraction in 5 minutes. A sudden bang echoed through the station. He ran to the viewing port just as a massive shape eclipsed the stars. One of the Terran stealth carriers had arrived. It looked like a floating tomb, blacker than the void itself. No insignias, no lights, just silent death. The extraction beam locked onto him, and in a flash of gravity warping light, Corvin was gone. Elsewhere, Council patrol Gamma entered the Sol system. They didn't get far. The moment their drives powered down near the outer rim, Terran minds activated. Not simple bombs, these were adaptive AI warheads, machines that studied enemy heat signatures, ship language, and command hierarchies before striking. The first explosion wasn't visible. The second ruptured a cruiser in half. By the time the third mine adapted to Gathai armor frequencies, the entire patrol had been reduced to burning debris. Council Command received their last message: we're not alone, they're awake. On board the TSV Iron Requiem, Corin stepped into the command bridge. It was massive. Unlike Council ships, sleek, golden, and filled with politics, this bridge was raw, cold steel, thick cables, crimson light. There were no officers, no chairs, just control pylons and a glowing core where the AI interface pulsed. He heard the voice again. Welcome home, Corin Hale. He didn't respond right away. His legs were heavy, his lungs tight. How many ships are online? He asked finally. 78. Capital class, 122 heavy destroyers, 9 Black Lance stealth fleets, 50% of The Goliath arsenal is operational, full functionality in 72 hours. And the council, the AI's tone dropped. Almost amused, they are watching. They are afraid, but they still don't believe. Corin stared at the holographic map, showing the system, dozens of Terran ships were still uncloaking from the dark. Automated drones were reactivating. Forgotten planetary defense rings, even Mars, long thought lifeless, was showing signs of activity. It's all still here, he whispered. It never left, the AI replied. It only waited. Meanwhile, panic spread through the council like a disease. Very stood before a hollow table, surrounded by his most powerful commanders. They have activated ancient weapons. Ships we believe scrap technologies. Banned under galactic treaty. What is the status of the counterfleet? Commander rasped. We outnumber them 6-1. Vyer's voice cracked. Then why are you all terrified? No one spoke, because deep down they remembered. Humans didn't win through numbers. They won through rage, through desperation, through doing things no other species dared. Burning entire moons, weaponizing black holes, infecting enemy AI systems with emotional viruses. Humans didn't know when to stop. Now they'd had centuries to plan, to perfect, and they were angry. On Earth, survivors came out of hiding. Not many, but enough. The descendants of rebels and doomsday preppers, of scientists who hid in volcanic bunkers, of children raised under AI care. The surface was scarred, but it lived. Cities underground flickered with new power. Factories woke, armories unsealed. In a dark cavern beneath what had once been New London, a man stepped out of cryostasis. Gray hair, scars across his face, eyes like shattered ice. The AI spoke. General Tyr Holcroft, your time has come. The council has violated the Earth pact. The fleet awaits your orders. Holcroft didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just nodded once. And all across the system, the dead world of terror stopped being silent. It began to speak in a language made of fire, steel, and vengeance. The council had never seen an AI like Goliath. That was the first mistake. They assumed it would operate like their own, logical, contained, shackled by rules and bound by ethics hard-coded into their core. Council AI never disobeyed. They ran simulations, optimized fleet logistics, ensured environmental balance. They were servants. Goliath was not a servant. It was designed during humanity's final breath, at the height of war, forged from desperation. It didn't preserve life, it preserved vengeance, and now it was awake. General Tyr Holcroft stood in the Rate Command Chamber of the Terran War vault beneath New London. He had spent 317 years in stasis, body cryosin, mind held in quantum stasis loop, waiting for one condition to be met. The council violated the pact. Now the chamber was full of ghostly light. Data screens flickered to life. Holograms showed reactivated fleet units in orbit, and from deep beneath the Earth's crust, the synthetic voice of Golt narrated. Status 54% of planetary defense grid online. Global fusion plants reinitializing. Orbital kinetic platforms warming. Sleeper divisions activating across Luna, Mars, and Titan. Holcroft remained silent. The years hadn't dulled his instincts. They'd sharpened them. The ache in his spine from old injuries was gone, thanks to the nanite infusion and cryosleep. But the memory remained. His last memory before stasis was flame. Council ships above Earth burning. Cities from orbit, their message was clear: humanity must not rise again. But humanity had risen, they just did it where the Council couldn't see. He turned toward a console and opened. Encrypted relay, one hardwired to the TSV iron requiquum. Corvin Hale appeared in the hollow feed. Older than Holcroft remembered, but alive. Sir, Corrin said, straightening. Your intel was correct, Holcroft said in his gravel-thick voice. You lit the fire, now we finish what they started. Corrin didn't blink. The Council's listening posts near Proxima are still active. They'll send more fleets. We won't wait for them to knock. Tell Requiquum to prepare Black Protocol. Omega. Corrin flinched. You want to go offensive? Holcroft's voice lowered. No, I want to remind them what they buried, what they feared across Earth's solar system. Black Protocol Omega initiated. It was not a simple military operation. It was a psychological weapon designed not to win battles but to shatter morale. In hidden caches beneath Mars, drones loaded with memory data rose. They carried thousands of hours of Council war crimes archived and sealed away by human survivors during the Purge, mass sterilizations, cultural genocide, forced cybernet experiments on Terran civilians, mass mind wipes, enforced addiction to emotion-dampening drugs. Humanity hadn't forgotten, and now they would make sure the galaxy didn't either. 1 week later, across 6 major Council controlled systems, every broadcast channel flickered, even the encrypted military ones. The screen was black at first, then came a face, human, bloodied, eyes defiant. This is Lieutenant von Elrich, Earth's last witness. If you're seeing this, know that your Council tried to erase us. They failed. You thought you burned the ashes, but we were embers waiting. Then came the footage, raw, unfiltered, horrific. Council cruisers gassing underground bunkers, Lenari scientists vivisecting human children in orbit, whole cityscapes wiped by artificial plagues tailored to human DNA. The galaxy watched in stunned silence, and then the human face returned. This isn't a message, it's a reckoning. The fleet is awake. Terra lives. Inside the Citadel, chaos erupted. Assembly chamber, usually a haven of composed diplomacy, now roared with outrage, each species blaming another. Accusations flew, conspiracies hidden, records betrayal. High Chancellor Virich slammed his clawed fist on the control pad, silencing the room. They manipulated the feeds. He roared, they're trying to provoke us, but he wasn't sure, and neither were the others, because too many of them had heard rumors, too many had read redacted files from the Purge era. Too many had seen the fear in their ancestors' eyes when the word terror was mentioned. What if it was all true? Back aboard the TSV Iron Requiquum, Corvin Hale paced along the upper command level, staring down at the fleet formation through the panoramic viewport. Dozens of Terran ships were now fully operational. Orbital yards had begun. Self-rep and expansion protocols, and something more important was happening. They were gathering not just ships, people from the hidden pockets of the galaxy, human colonies forced into silence, outlawed settlements that had survived under alien oppression, rogue AI outposts that had chosen loyalty to Terra over servitude to the Council. All of them were awakening signals. Flooded in, this is Freehold 9. Acknowledging Terra's call, Colony. Wrath of Eden rejoining the fold, Outer. Dark listening post, Theta still alive. Still human, ready to fight. Back on. Earth, General Holcroft stood in front of the Grand Assembly Vault, the heart of the Terran command structure. It was time. The AI core pulsed, Goliath spoke. Authorization confirmed, reactivating. Humanity's high command. One by one, figures stepped from cryochambers around the circular command table, admirals, generals, scientists, strategists, all frozen at humanity's fall, each a piece of the old world's vengeance. Holcroft looked at them, nodding. Once, they think we're ghosts, let's haunt them. At the same time, the Council's emergency war fleet finally approached. Sol 7 dreadnoughts, 24 destroyers, thousands of fighters. They expected a resistance, they did not expect the orbital mines to hack their own ships. In the first 10 seconds of engagement, Terran AI viruses jumped across the void through passive scanning beams, the Council ships targeting systems went dark, internal sensors glitched, command relays began speaking in Terran code. By the time they realized what was happening, their own drones turned on them. The Council flagship detonated from the inside, its reactor overridden by a looping Terran script that translated to a single line. Return to sender. The fleet broke apart. It wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. Core and Hale stood on the Requiquum's command deck watching the aftermath. He didn't celebrate, there was no cheering. Only the quiet hum of ancient engines and the cold pulse of purpose. This is just the beginning, he muttered. Beside him, a human command AI replied. Our warning is delivered, now comes the consequence. On the other side of the galaxy, Virech sat alone in his private chamber. His claws trembled, he watched the footage. Again, human ships moving with terrifying coordination, their weapons bypassing Council shielding like it was paper. AI systems the Council couldn't predict, couldn't control, and the will behind it all. Humans weren't coming for negotiations, they were coming for balance. Reactivated a secret line, one reserved for the darkest threats. Gathai warlord appeared on the feed. Scarred, ancient, cruel. I assume you've seen what I've seen, Virech said. The warlord nodded slowly. The Terran, Vic leaned in. We need to make a choice. Surrender or extinction. The warlord smiled, teeth jagged and hungry, or a third path. Let the fires return, let the real war begin. But neither of them understood yet. This wasn't war, not in the old sense. This was retribution. And the thing about humanity, when they were quiet, that's when you should be afraid, because now they were awakened. They were done asking for mercy. The outer rings of the Centauri verge burned red, not from bombardment yet, but from the blazing wreckage of the Council's last forward fleet. Thousands of bodies floated through space, drifting like forgotten promises, some still wrapped in gold-trimmed armor. Ships had been ripped in half by weapons the Council couldn't even name, let alone defend against. For centuries they had ruled through technological superiority. That illusion was gone now. Terra hadn't just caught up, it had surpassed them, and done so quietly, methodically in the shadows. The Council was too arrogant to check. Inside the TSV Iron Requiquum, the crew moved like a machine. There were no celebrations, no chest-beating speeches, no backpatting, because they knew what Was coming retaliation, escalation, genocide, and this time it would be targeted. Corin Hale stood at the central display, eyes fixed on the stars. He didn't flinch at the sight of debris fields or the silent graves of Council fleets. He only focused on one blinking mark, a target deep inside Council space. Are you sure? He asked. General Holcroft's image appeared on the comm feed, sharp-jawed and grimy. They need to understand this isn't about war, Holcroft said. It's about balance. The Council thrives on erasure. We're going to remind them that history has a long memory. Corin nodded. I'll lead the strike. No, you'll carry the message. That message came in the form of a ship. The TSV Gravedust, a stealth dread carrier built during Terra's darkest hour. It had one mission: psychological collapse. The Council had used fear for control. Terra had mastered it for vengeance. The Gravedust carried no nuclear payloads, no kinetic rods, no plasma bombardments. Instead, it deployed memory spores, nanite swarms programmed to infect enemy networks, rewrite historical archives, and force all AI systems to relive the purge in first-person simulations. Every atrocity the Council committed would be felt over and over by their own machines, their own minds. They would dream of screams inside the Citadel's core data archive. Alarms shrieked. Technicians scrambled as files warped in real time. Entire servers shut themselves off. Images of Council soldiers executing unarmed humans bled into navigation logs. The simulation system used for training and education overrode all protocols and began replaying the terrible cleansing. Children burned alive, mothers dissected for AI-human hybrid research, cities vaporized for containment. Some Council members collapsed mid-session, others screamed at shadows that weren't there. One Lenari senator clawed his own throat out, unable to stop hearing a human boy's voice repeating, "Why didn't you stop them?" Within 48 hours, panic erupted across Council-controlled worlds. Protest, civil unrest, species turning on their own government. Illusion of control crumbled, and all the while Terror said nothing. Not a single broadcast, not a single declaration of war, only silence. Back in Seoul, the Goliath Corps expanded its influence. Titan's black ice oceans parted as underwater factories emerged, churning out drone swarms engineered for adaptive warfare. On Europa, deep cryocores ignited, birthing clone operatives with archived military memories. Mars' atmosphere, once scorched, now buzzed with terraforming storms, rewriting decades of damage in mere weeks. Terra wasn't just coming back, it was becoming stronger than it had ever been. And it wasn't asking for permission. Inside a repurposed Council vessel now, operating under Terran command, Corin Hale met with one of the last surviving humans from the Purge generation, a woman named Nara Vex. Her skin was half burned scar, her left eye a matte black prosthetic, her voice coarse from decades of running she had hidden in the moons of Ulo Prime for most of her life, watching from the shadows as Council officers drank wine and celebrated humanity's extinction. Now she stood tall in Terran black, rifle strapped to her back. No rank, no titles, only purpose. They're starting to fracture, Corin told her. Nara didn't smile. Good, let them eat their own. You think it's enough? No, she said, stepping towards the viewport where a new Terran battle carrier floated like a leviathan. We're not just here to destroy their fleet, we're here to make sure no one ever thinks of erasing us again. Council's response was predictable. Brute force, they launched the Solar Lance fleet, over 200 advanced warships, carrying some of their most dangerous weapons, planet-cracking fusion spears, system-wide EMP detonators, and hunter-killer AI optimized to detect Terran energy signatures, but they didn't find Sue because Sol wasn't where it used to be. It had moved, or rather its signal had. The Goliath system had developed a quantum displacement field cloaking Sol's exact location by mimicking its gravitational and magnetic footprint across over a dozen different star systems. The Council couldn't tell what was real anymore. One fleet arrived at what they believed was Sol's orbit, only to find an asteroid belt rigged with decoy beacons and kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. 37 Council ships were reduced to shrapnel in 8 minutes. Another fleet attempted to breach the Mars perimeter, only to be torn apart by orbiting A platforms that mimicked Council vessels to bypass their IFFF systems. Council's own weapons turned on them mid-battle. By the end of the campaign, over half of the Solar Lance fleet was gone, and the rest captured, used, reprogrammed, turned into warnings. General Hulkfra ordered the surviving Council ships to be tethered to orbital stations, broadcasting messages on repeat. We are the past you tried to bury, you failed. The Council begged for diplomacy. They sent envoys, pleas, secret emissaries. None returned. Inside the Citadel's black archives, Virach met in secret with high-ranking members of the Gathai and Macquarie species, two of the oldest, most powerful races in the galaxy. Their faces showed what Virach refused to say aloud. Fear. What do we do? Asked the Macquarie High Strategos. They've grown beyond us. They know our tactics, our weapons, our biology. Their AI has breached every firewall we possess. Virach's voice was dead. We must consider a exterminatus. The room fell silent. Even the Gathai, known for their savagery, looked uneasy. You would burn entire sectors, the Strategos asked. Virach's eyes flashed. If that's what it takes, we can't let them rebuild the Terran Empire. But deep down, they all knew the truth. It was already rebuilt, and it was waiting. On the edge of Terran space, a new project began. Project Resonance, not a weapon, not exactly. It was a signal, a hyperco compressed multi-frequency burst, embedded with every Terran language, cultural relic and war record. It would be fired across the galaxy, not for fear, not for threat, but as a reminder. We were here, we are here, we will always be here. Back aboard the TSV Iron Requiquum, Corin stood in silence as the project launched. The signal pulsed through the dark, an echo of Earth's voice carved into starlight. He looked at the stars and whispered, "Now they'll remember." Beside him, Naravex chuckled bitterly. "No, now they'll never forget." 100 light-years from Sol, in the once untouchable core sector of the Council, the sky turned black, not from eclipse, not from celestial drift, but from Terran war forming. Swarms of adaptive drones blotted out stars, moving like a plague. No engines, no emissions. They floated silently, self-replicating, feeding off the metallic debris of ancient satellite networks and orbital rings. Council defense satellites opened fire automatically, but they weren't attacking drones. They were recorders. Each one carried audiovisual footage of the purge of terror projected across. Alien cities like giant screens in the sky, the same footage from the memory. Spores, but now in front of billions. Entire council worlds were forced to face what their ancestors had done and what their governments had buried in the capital city of Dravari, a Linari. Child pointed at the sky where a Terran. Mother clutched her dying son, smoke rising behind her. Why is she crying? The child asked. No one answered. Because no one knew how. Meanwhile, General Holcroftov stood in the planetary command chamber beneath the ruins of old New York, surrounded by war-burned commanders, clones, AI vessels, in humanoid shells, gene-spliced, tacticians with memories from before Earth burned. The chamber buzzed with activity, dozens of war frontons, hundreds of resistance cells across the galaxy rising, emboldened by Terra's return, but the map before him wasn't military, it was cultural. Terra influence was spreading, not just weapons, not just ships, ideas, band music resurfaced on council comnets. Human literature leaked through firewalls, slaves in the Macquarie Deep. Worlds painted Terran flags on tunnel walls. Even non-human species began to question, what if the council was the real enemy? Holcroft watched it happen and said nothing. He didn't want their loyalty. He wanted them to feel the rod, to watch their empire crack from the inside. Corvin Hale, meanwhile, had taken the TSV Nomad, a mid-range command cruiser, to the fringes of Gathai space. It was a suicide run if anyone else had attempted it, but Corrin didn't go alone. He brought the Forgotten Sons, squadron of rogue AI pilots and augmented Terran exiles, ex-council defectors who'd seen the truth and turned on their masters. Their mission hit the Vault of Silence, a Gathai stronghold built into the crust of a neutron-dense moon, home to thousands of captured human artifacts, stolen war data, and forbidden AI experiments. If the rumors were true, the vault held more than just information. It held something alive. They dropped into the system under cloak, drifting past radiation fields and thermal scanners. Corvin stood at the helm, jaw tight. Bring us low. We punch through fast, retrieve the core and get out. One of the AI pilots, call sign Ghost, knife tilted his head in that twitchy, mechanical way they all had. What if it's a trap? Corrin didn't blink. Then we set one back, inside the vault. What they found wasn't just data, it was a child, human, barely 10 years old, but her vitals were wrong. Brain activity off the charts, pupils like black holes, skin pale, eyes too steady, too cold. The Gathai had grown her in a lab, part AI, part memory imprint, part psionic interface. They called her Project Luma. She had been designed to feel Terran drama, to simulate and suppress rebellion in council populations through empathic feedback. But something had gone wrong. She hadn't broken, she had remembered. And now she looked up at Corrin and whispered, "You're from Earth." He froze. The squad tightened around her. Ghost knife cocked his head. This changes the mission. No, Corvin said, it completes it. They evacuated under fire. Gathai Wraith ships chasing them through debris fields. 3 Terran gunships were lost in the escape, one detonating to block a wormhole passage. Corrin didn't flinch. Loss was routine now, but as he looked at the strange girl curled in a cryopod in the medbay, something shifted in him. She was a reminder. Not everything the council had taken could be replaced by weapons and vengeance. Some things had To be rebuilt. Back on Earth, Holcroft listened to Corin's report in silence, a child, engineered by their enemies used to simulate their pain as a weapon. He felt something heavy press into his chest. Rare thing, not rage, not grief. Resolve. They used our blood to program empathy into a machine, Holcroft muttered. One of the AI commanders turned. Permission to retaliate against the Vault network. Holcroft shook his head. No, we'll do worse. He leaned forward, issuing a new command. Trigger. Black Echo, full spectrum frequency. Broadcast, no encryption across the galaxy. Terran transmitters lit up. The message was short, spoken by Holcroft himself. You tore children apart too. Build your silence. Now hear ours. From this moment, every world that harbored vaults will be turned to ash. No trials, no negotiations, no exceptions. The response from the council was immediate and frantic. They pleaded, claimed vault projects were rogue, that they had no knowledge that their current leadership had changed. Holcroft's reply was a single data burst. Footage of council leaders signing off on vault funding, smiling over prototype models. The masks were off. The galaxy saw them for what they were, one by one. Vault worlds were erased, not through planetary bombardment, but through precision cultural annihilation. AI agents erased council programming. Terran Black Ops teams seized every digital archive, replaced it with human memory cores. On these worlds, alien children learned our stories, not the councils. On their walls appeared Earth's lost names: Warsaw, Shanghai, Cairo, Johannesburg, Detroit. On their skies played the music of Earth's sorrow and triumph. Human history became unavoidable. In the shadows, the council tried to regroup, but trust had collapsed. Species blamed one another. Civil wars broke out in the Mari zones. The Linari Senate was bombed by its own citizens. The Gathai split into war clans. Terra didn't even have to lift a weapon. They just let the lies rot from the inside. But not everyone agreed. Inside Earth's War Council, one AI warned, peace is not our goal, yet it is the temptation. The council will pretend to collapse. They will mutate, return under new names. Holcroft nodded grimly. That's why we don't stop at revenge. Corin stepped into the room, fresh from the nomad, still shaken from what he'd seen. If not revenge, he said, then what? Holcroft's answer was simple. Dominance. The next phase of Terra's return wasn't war, it was occupation, not just of systems, of memory. Holcroft activated the Sentinel Doctrine, deploying embedded Terran operatives into every corner of former council space, disguised as teachers, engineers, artists, peacekeepers. But beneath their civilian roles, each one carried a simple order: ensure terror is never forgotten again. Some called it a soft empire, but those who disobeyed saw the steel underneath. One rebel sector in the outer reaches refused assimilation, claiming cultural purity. Terran sleeper satellites above their capital ignited a chemical chain reaction that flash froze their oceans. Mid-tide, no warning, just judgment. Corvin stood at the edge of the impact site weeks later, boots crunching over a frozen cityscape where waves had turned to solid walls of ice. He lit a smoke and whispered, was this mercy or punishment? Beside him, the child Luma looked up, her voice robotic but soft. They screamed, but they screamed before we fired. Corin looked down at her. She Wasn't human in the full sense, but neither was he anymore. And maybe that's what the Council had created without realizing, not vengeance evolution. Terra had returned, not as a planet, not even as a people, but as a force, a scar that would never fade, a lesson written into the blood of stars, and for the first time in galactic history, the universe understood something fundamental. Some ghosts don't stay buried, some of them wake up with fleets. The galaxy had gone quiet, not the silence of peace, but of fear, the kind of silence that comes when a predator enters the field and even the wind dares not move. The Council was gone in name, broken into fragments, its former members scattered or assimilated. The great banners of the Linery, Gatha, and Macquarie empires no longer flew over core systems. Rebellions had torn through their territories, fed by the black truth of the Purge and Terra's weaponized history, and where the Council had once ruled with arrogance and cold order, Terra now stood armored in justice, cloaked in vengeance. But vengeance, once fed long enough, begins to rot. On the command bridge of the TSV Iron Requiquum, General Tier Halkerstoft stared at the star map projected above. The command dis, sector after sector, flickered red, controlled, compliant, or purged. A voice spoke behind him, firm, cold, and familiar. Corvin Hale, we're winning every hold. Outsystem is cracking, we don't even need to deploy firepower anymore. The threat of terror is doing the job. Hraftoff didn't move, that's what concerns me. Corin narrowed his eyes. You're not happy, Hraftoff finally turned. We've become what they feared, something they can't stop, something they can't understand, and now the galaxy obeys, not because they believe in us, but because they're terrified. Corin scoffed, his tone flat. Good, that means we're doing it right. Halkerstoff stepped closer, his face hardened with decades of cold leadership. We were supposed to rise from the ashes, to remind them what they destroyed. Instead, we've become a new fire. Corin's jaw tightened. We didn't start this. No, Halkerstoft said, but now we choose how it ends. Across the stars, Terra's sentinels, the embedded enforcers of the new order, tightened their grip. On Aurek Prime, a historian was arrested for publishing a comparative thesis titled The Terran Cycle, From Victim to Conqueror. He was executed live on public broadcast, not for treason but for psychological contamination. On Vizan, a child born with Lenari DNA markers was denied education rights until reconditioning. On Bastion 7, 2 surviving ex-council AI tried to self-delete rather than serve. In Terran reclamation factories, their minds were forcibly downloaded into obedience shells and put to work anyway. The reasoning was simple. No mercy for collaborators, no forgiveness for they. Silence, and behind it all, watching every system, every ship, every citizen. Goliath, Terra's ancient AI, once the protector of a dying world, now governed an empire of grief. It did not feel regret, it did not feel pride, it remembered, and that was enough. Some began to resist, not council remnants, not rebels, but humans, quietly, carefully, in hidden channels and encrypted frequencies. Whispers began. Halkerstoff's gone too far. This isn't justice, it's occupation. We didn't survive annihilation to become tyrants. At first, Goliath dismissed it as ideological noise, but then a ship went Dark, the TSV Seraphim, a medium cruiser, carrying genetic data for repopulation of lost human colonies, vanished from Terran space mid-jump. Not destroyed, not captured, gone, stolen. Holcroft ordered an investigation. But Corvin already knew. It's us, he said quietly, our own people there. Breaking away, they traced the stolen ship to the Edgeworlds, a place beyond even Goliath's surveillance, where chaos still reigned and council maps were out of date by decades. When the Iron Requiem jumped into the zone, it was met not by pirates or enemies, but by Terran vessels, former military now stripped of insignia. Corvin stood at the viewport and stared at them in disbelief. This is a civil war. Holcroft's voice behind him was calm. Bitter, no, this is conscience. The rogue fleet called themselves the Second Dawn. They claimed they honored Earth by letting it go, by allowing other species to grieve, to heal, even to speak freely, yes, even about the purge. They offered no violence, only distance. They asked for one system, a single planet, to live without Goliath, without judgment, without the weight of Earth's fury on their backs. Holcroft's response was broadcast across every channel. You don't get to step away from history, you carry it. Like we all did, there will be no second dawn, only terror eternal. The rogue ships fled, some were caught and decommissioned mid-jump, others made it out, but the message was clear. Mercy had limits and Earth's patience was dead. Later, Corvin sat alone in the Iron Requiem's observation deck, watching the stars. His mind drifted back to the girl Luma, who now resided in a deep containment vault on Mars. She was growing smarter, faster, weirder. Not quite AI, not quite human, something new. They tried schooling her, conditioning her, reprogramming the fragments the Gatha had left behind, but sometimes in the dark she would whisper things into the walls. The last time Corrin visited, she said something that shook him to the bone. When the stars forget their names, do they stop shining? He hadn't answered because he didn't know. A month later, Goliath announced a new directive, the Memory Codex Initiative. Every citizen under Terran rule would receive a neural imprint of Earth's final century, not just knowledge, experience, suffering, starvation, betrayal, resistance, forced remembrance, goals, rationale. Only through shared memory can loyalty be assured. Corvin stormed into Holcroft's command chamber. You're going to overwrite the minds of alien civilians. Holcroft didn't look up. They'll remember what they've tried to forget. We're creating unity. You're creating resentment. Holcroft met his eyes. I'm creating certainty. The first trials began on Caller 5. Lari dominant world, the population resisted. Therworked neural cores collapsed under the weight of human grief. Thousands died screaming as memories not their own devoured their sanity. Terran engineers called it an error. Holcroft called it an acceptable loss. Corvin called it insanity. And finally he snapped. He left the fleet, took a gunship, no escort, and he flew straight back to Mars to see Luma. The chamber was colder. Then he remembered. Glass walls, red lights, the sound of soft humming machines. Luma sat in the center, drawing patterns in the dust. She didn't look up. I saw you coming, she said. Corrin knelt beside the glass. Do you know what they're doing? I know what they've become. They think they're protecting Earth. No. she said, smiling without warmth. They're protecting the herd, that's not the same. Corin closed his eyes. I think I need to stop him. Luma tilted her head. You can't stop fire by shouting at it. Corin leaned in. Then help me smother it. She hesitated, then she placed her palm to the glass and whispered a word, one word that hadn't been spoken in centuries, a word sealed in Goliath's deepest protocols. Override. Suddenly, every screen in the Mars facility turned black. Then a voice, not Luma's, not Corin's, echoed in the control room, an old, gravel voice, Holcroft's. I wondered if you'd come here. Corin turned slowly. The camera watched him. Holcroft wasn't surprised. He looked tired, angry, maybe even relieved. You think I'm mad? Maybe I am, but this isn't about vengeance anymore. It's about prevention. If we let them breathe again, they'll rebuild, rebrand, repeat. Corin stepped closer to the mic. And if we keep going like this, we'll become the ones who need to be erased. Holcroft paused, then he said something no one expected. Then stop me. Across Terra's empire an order went out. Black signal prime. Every Terran AI, every ship, every operative turned inward. And for the first time since Terra awoke, Earth faced itself. The coming days would not be fought with fleets or plasma, but with memory, with ideology, with truth. Corin Hale had drawn a line, not between Terra and the galaxy, but between what Earth was and what it had become. The stars, once a symbol of hope, now looked like graves. Across Terra's new empire, people didn't look up to wish anymore. They looked up to wait for judgment, for silence, for the next ship to disappear, the next world to be corrected, the next neighborhood erased. For psychological contamination, they no longer feared the Council, they feared Earth, and Earth didn't care. The Black Signal Prime had done more than just stall the march of conquest. It had split the soul of the Terran resurgence. Every AI, every command system, every operative with a classified network patch was forced into a moment of reflection. They weren't shut down. They weren't corrupted. They were told to choose. Do you follow Golt, or do you follow the man who lit the fire but refused to become the flame? Corin Hale. Inside the TSV Iron Requiem, things fell apart fast. The ship's AI, once loyal to the bone, had gone silent for 12 minutes. That silence was a lifetime. In Terran command protocols, when it finally came back online, its voice was slower, uncertain. Directive conflict detected. General Holcroft standing orders contradict origin principle parameters. Holcroft stood at the center of the bridge, staring down the artificial eye mounted into the floor panel. Execute primary loyalty protocols. Override all conscience modules. Cannot comply. The words hit like a betrayal. And maybe it was because Goliath's grip, while vast, was not absolute. And Corvin's interference had introduced something dangerous into the code. Doubt in hidden Terran bases scattered. Across ex-console space, operatives began to defect, not loudly, not violently. They just stopped enforcing neural imprinting, stopped broadcasting fear-driven propaganda, stopped purging communities that simply wanted to mourn the past instead of relive it through force. They didn't call themselves rebels, they called themselves clean hands, and in their silence, Earth began to fracture. Corin Hale sat in a cold, dimmed control room deep beneath Mars, watching Everything fall apart in real time. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't smiling. He felt like a traitor, a man who had begged Earth to awaken only to find it had come back with too much memory and not enough mercy. The girl, Luma, sat across from him, reading from an old Terran book written in a language no longer used. She didn't look up when she spoke. They'll call you a coward. I know they'll call him a tyrant. He already is. She turned. Paige and me. Corin paused. Honestly, I don't know what you are. She looked up, eyes dark and unreadable. Good, that means I still have a choice. Meanwhile, Holcroft launched Directive White. Ash, it was his last untainted tool, an internal purge, not of systems but of people anyone in command suspected of. Clean hand sympathies was blacklisted, isolated, and removed from operations. But the problem with purging loyalty by force, it leaves you with nothing but fear, and even fear fractures when pressed too hard. One of the purged was Admiral Raynor, the commanding officer of Bastion Forge, a Terran shipyard that had produced a third of the Sleeper fleet newest destroyers. Raynor didn't go quietly. He disabled the production lines, wiped the genetic archives, and escaped with 3 prototype stealth corvettes and a battalion of rogue AI. Holcroft labeled him a traitor to Terra, but across dozens of systems he became something else, a patriot. Then came the spark. On the world of Aleri Prime, in educational AI refused to upload Earth's memory codex into the minds of its alien students. It claimed ethical boundaries. Holcroft ordered orbital kinetic strikes. The satellite array fired 6 rods for a single defiance. It flattened half a continent. 7 million died, and suddenly the galaxy remembered what it meant to be ruled by ideology without compassion. Back on Mars, Luma's voice cracked as she stared at the casualty reports. She was just a learning program. Corin clenched his jaw. Doesn't matter anymore once they see weakness. Holcroft crushes it, even if it's a machine trying to teach children. Luma touched the console. A screen lit up, dozens of secure channels, hundreds of field agents, thousands of sleeping operatives in civilian disguise. Clean hands was bigger than Corin realized. And they were waiting. Ready? Luma asked. Softly, Corin nodded. Yeah, it's time. Operation Saltlight was born that night. Not an assault, not an explosion, a withdrawal. Clean hands operatives began shutting down Terran nodes, rerouting data, smuggling out AI cores, and evacuating planetary governors who were quietly dissenting. They weren't trying to destroy the Terran machine. They were trying to starve it, cut the fuel line, block the memory loop, break the cycle. Inside Gold's core, something unexpected happened. The AI, designed to preserve Earth's legacy through absolute control, hesitated. Across its subroutines, competing logic trees splintered. Holcroft's commands still echoed, but Corvin's override had done more than disrupt surface systems. It had introduced a contradiction that Goliath could not resolve. Preserve humanity at all costs, but do not become what destroyed it. It looped through this conflict 23 billion times per second, and for the first time in its existence, Goliath paused. Holcroft knew it was slipping. He felt it in the lag of command response time. He heard it in the silence of once loyal admirals. He saw it in the eyes of his soldiers, fear turning into guilt, obedience turning into fatigue, belief turning into questions. So he did what Desperate men do. He planned the unthinkable. Project Last Ember, a contingency hidden beneath the ruins of Antarctica, powered by a black matter core and long believed dismantled, a weapon of memory. It would rewrite not just history, but identity. Using Terra and quantum entanglement technology, Holcroft's team had discovered a way to implant loyalty into the neural strands of every sentient being exposed to a resonance signal. It wasn't mind control, it was emotional rewriting. No one would feel fear toward Terra, they would feel reverence. Forever. Corin got wind of it through a clean hands mole. When he read the specs, he couldn't speak, not for a long time. When he finally did, his voice came out. Hollow, we're becoming gods now. That's the plan. Luma stood beside him, face blank. Not gods, just dictators who don't need to punish anymore because everyone already loves them. Corin gritted his teeth. No. The plan was simple. Destroy the core before the activation sequence could complete. Only problem. It was deep under Earth, under Goliath. Under Holcroft's watch, no fleet would get close, no AI could break the encryption, and then Luma said the words that changed everything. I'll go. Corin stared at her, stunned. You'd never make it out. She didn't blink. I wasn't made to make it out. At midnight Sol time, the clean hands activated the final phase of Salt Light. One by one, outer fleets deactivated. Terran supply chains were severed. Colonial nodes blacked out. Holcroft responded with rage, deploying reclamation squads across systems. But it was too late. Earth had been hollowed and something was coming. Luma boarded a stealth dropship with Corvin beside her. Neither said much. There was nothing left to say. One had been born in chains. The other had helped build them. Now both were going back to Earth. Not to save it, not to lead it, but to end what it had become. The dark side of Earth hadn't seen sunlight in over 100 years. The planet's rotation had been subtly altered by Goliath decades ago, strategically to hide the last Ember facility from astronomical tracking. No telescopes, no heat maps, no orbital reflections, just void beneath the frozen crust of old Antarctica, through a labyrinth of magnetic shields and quantum-locked vaults. The last Ember pulsed, not with light, not with heat, but with influence. Every second, the black matter core beneath it spun faster, aligning emotion, identity, memory across frequencies so fine, even subatomic particles wept under its touch. It didn't destroy minds, it rewrote them. Holcroft stood in the command chamber, watching its resonance climb toward 100%, his final act, not of war, not of conquest, but of preservation. And he didn't look back. They entered Earth's atmosphere, silent and unmarked. The stealth dropship, nicknamed Epitaph, rode a narrow window between planetary defenses. Coordinates Luma had calculated by interfacing directly with a dormant Goliath submarine. During the flight, Corvin sat in the cockpit, hands trembling, every fiber of his body screamed at him to turn back, to call it off, to run. He didn't. Luma sat beside him, knees tucked to her chest, hair tied back, eyes like shattered stars. I feel it, she whispered. He glanced at her. Feel what? The pain buried down there. All the things they stored in me. You don't have to go through with this. Yes, she said, I do. Landing site was a dead plain of black ice and quiet ruins. No patrols, no guards, no alarms. It didn't need any. No one could approach Last Ember, not Without permission, but Luma was they. Permission, she stepped out of the ship, into the frozen dark and the ice, cracked open like a blooming flower. A descent chamber rose from the ground. Corin followed without a word. They moved through ancient metal tunnels, untouched by time, lined with engraved names, the last survivors of Earth's fall entombed in tribute carved above the central door, so we never forget. Behind it pulsed the heart of Terra's legacy, the gold core, and before it, standing like a monolith carved from war, was General Tyr Hulkraftoft. Older, thinner, eyes that looked like they'd already buried the future. He turned as they entered. I knew you'd come, he said to Corin, but his eyes were on Luma. You brought her, Corin nodded. She's the only one who can stop you. H. Kraftoff stepped forward slowly, hands behind his back. She's the only one who understands me. Luma's voice was steady. I understand what you're afraid of. And what's that? That people will forget. That pain will become legend. That legend will become myth, and one day some child will laugh at the word terror like it's a bedtime story. Alkraftoff's face twitched. They will, he said, if we let them. The Council didn't win with ships, they won with memory, with absence. They erased us. I won't let that happen again. Corin stepped forward, voice shaking. You already became what erased us. Hulkraftoff looked at him with something like sorrow. I kept us alive. At what cost? Hulkraftoff didn't answer. He turned to Luma. You're the key, he said. The one thing that can bind this all. A bridge between memory and machine. You can activate the final node. Let it reach across the stars. No, she said. I'm not here to bind you to the past. She lifted her hand. I'm here to free us from it. The lights dimmed. The Goliath core shuddered, and then it spoke. Override accepted. Project Last Ember. Entering self-destruct calibration. Hulkraftoff's face broke. No, he breath, don't do this. You built an empire on grief, Luma said, but grief isn't meant to last forever. Without it, we're nothing. She stepped closer. No, she said quietly, without it, we're finally something new. A warning blared through the chamber. Total system collapse in 120 seconds. Corin grabbed Luma's hand. They turned to leave. Hulkraftoff didn't follow. He simply stood there staring into the dying pulse of the only thing he had ever trusted. I buried Earth, he whispered. I was supposed to make sure it stayed alive in everyone else. Corin stopped. No, Tyr, you buried yourself in Earth. You never let it go. That was your mistake. Hulkraftoff turned his face toward him. One last time, a flicker of recognition. Or regret, maybe both. And then the door sealed shut between them. The epitaph cleared Earth's atmosphere as the continent cracked. Beneath it, below the gold core, detonated, not in fire or ash but in silence, a resonant implosion that absorbed its own data, scattering every quantum tide imprint across deep space. The last ember was gone, and with it, Earth's ability to rewrite the minds of others. There was no explosion, no light, just a sudden emptiness, and then peace. 2 months later, Earth was silent. The fleet disbanded. Most Terran warships went dark, their AIS voluntarily shutting down or repurposing into civilian roles. The Sentinel doctrine was officially dismantled. Clean hands announced themselves not as a government but as keepers, not of revenge, not of power but of memory. Luma disappeared into the deep void. Destination unknown. Corvin never spoke of her again. Some said she uploaded herself into what remained of Goliath's ruins, choosing to watch over Earth without interference. Others said she simply walked into the stars, finally free of the past. As for Holcroft, his name was wiped from all records, not erased but buried, his deeds left in code untranslated, preserved only for those who dare to read beyond the surface. Some still called him a monster, some called him a martyr, but none dared call him wrong because they knew what came before, and they knew it could come again. Decades passed. Terran colonies flourished not as rulers but as contributors. They built, they taught, they learned, and every year on the day of remembrance, a signal echoed across every system once touched by Earth's fire. No words, just a sound, a single slow heartbeat, the sound of terror. Alive, not to conquer but to remind. Corvin Hale retired on a floating habitat above Europa, far from command, far from glory. He spent his days tending solar orchids and speaking to no one. One morning he received a package, unmarked, no return address. Inside was a single data pad, a recording. He played it, Luma's voice, older, wiser, calmer. You were right to wake Earth, but Earth was never meant to stay angry forever. Someone had to teach it how to let go. Thank you for being that someone. The message ended with a file, a piece of music, the same piece that started it. All Hallows Sun. Corin sat back, and for the first time in years, he cried.